Welcome to Globetrotting with Lynx. I am your host, and I guess I should get the name out of the way right from the start. I'm a science fiction fan, and I was honored with a fictional peerage by a group that I used to run, and that peerage was Lynx. Now I tend to use it in fandom circles, but also as a nickname as I really like it, and it goes well with my new image from a few years ago. For this 5th episode, I picked another place that I visit a few times a year. This is London, England, and if you listen to my podcast, you may not be surprised to learn that this is the second of my favorite cities. This is a classical English city and one that I highly recommend you visit if you get the chance. I always have amazing adventures when visiting London, and I have a travel guide on London up on my travel advisor profile, and you can find the link in the episode description. For those of you who follow our travel podcast, this is the companion to episode 12. Before we start, I want to actually take a chance now and thank our sponsors. I haven't really done so on this video podcast before, but Mal Books and Baronial Productions for their support in this process. Additionally, this episode is debuting our new intro theme and our outro theme, and I hope you enjoy them. They were fun to make, and the feedback during the process was good. So, without further ado, I give you London. London is a city which has an interesting history. I find it hysterically funny that the BBC said the following about Naples in Italy, quote, "The Italian city with too much history to handle," when London has at least as much history, if not actually maybe more. While most historians now agree that London was founded as Londinium by the Romans, there is evidence of settlements in the area which date back to 4,800 BCE. This is why most history books will describe London as a city of time immemorium, which is a really fancy way of saying the city is so old that we don't know when it was actually first founded. This is how the City of London is regarded within English law, and this has led to two interesting quirks. The first of these are that there are actually two Londons, and the second is that there's a person in Parliament known as the Remembrancer, whose sole role is to ensure that the laws of England and the United Kingdom do not adversely impact the right of the City of London. Granted, this role is limited by the rules of Parliament, and the role is more advisory than anything else with no real power. Back, however, to the history of London. In 39 CE, the Romans invaded the island of England. In 43 CE, they founded a fortification known as Londinium. This was not the capital of Roman Britain, as that was Colchester. In 60 CE, Londinium was destroyed by Queen Boudica of the Iceni, who were an ancient people who came from modern-day Norfolk. About 10 years later, the Romans reclaimed Londinium, and it grew to about 60,000 in size. It was also home to the largest basilica north of the Alps, giving just some indication of how important the Romans viewed the island of England. A wall was built around part of Londinium between 180 and 225 CE. Parts of this wall still exist today, and the line of the wall helps define the City of London. By 255 CE, an additional wall had been built, and 6 of the gates leading into the city eventually gave rise to the areas of London known as Ludgate, Newgate, Aldersgate, Cripplegate, Bishopsgate, and Aldgate. The 7th gate, Moorgate, dates from the medieval period. In 410 CE, with troubles back home, the Romans left England. It was at this time that the Anglo-Saxons entered the picture. The oldest Anglo-Saxon structure is actually a cemetery which they uncovered near present-day Covent Garden. The main Anglo-Saxon settlement was where the Strand is today, between Aldwych and Trafalgar Square. It was known as Lundenwic, and the suffix wic denotes that it was a settlement built for trading. In 604, King Ethelbert of Kent allowed Mellitus, who was the first post-Roman bishop on the island, and who had been invited by the first king to convert to Christianity, who was Sabreth of Essex, to found the original St. Paul's Cathedral, originally known as the Cathedral Church of St. Paul the Apostle. After Soberth passed, the pagan kings which followed likely had the original building destroyed. Christianity became a permanent fixture with King Sigebreth II around 650 CE. In the 800s, the Viking attacks became a common occurrence, and London was sacked in 842 and 851 CE. The Great Heathen Army wintered in London in 871, and the city remained in Danish hands until King Alfred the Great of Wessex captured it in 866, and it was incorporated into the Kingdom of Mercia. The Roman walls were repaired, and the city became known as Lundenburg. Around this time, Suffolk sprang up under the name of Suthinga Gerwok, which means defensive work of the men of Surrey. Lundenwic was renamed Eldwick, which is today Aldwych. In 978, King Ethelred the Unready issued the Laws of London, which covered things like tolls, home invasion, and coinage for London. When Ethelred died in 1016, the Wittgengemot, which was the king's council, proclaimed his son Edmund as king. Edmund was a bad king, and he lost London and all of England to Canute. By 1042, Canute and his dynasty had ended, and Edward the Confessor restored English rule. He was responsible for the founding of Westminster Abbey and the city of Westminster, which slowly supplanted the city of London as the seat of government. 1066 saw a messy time in English succession, and it was essentially solved by the Norman invasion, when William the Conqueror basically came over and said, "Yeah, all this is mine now." He built a new fortress, which today is known as the Tower of London. As king, William granted a charter which conferred upon London its existing rights and privileges and laws. 1097 saw Westminster Hall begin construction under William Rufus, also known as King William II. This would eventually become the Palace of Westminster. London's self-government was further consolidated in rights granted it by King John in 1199 and in Magna Carta in 1215. By the mid-1300s, the city guilds had begun organizing, and the new post of Lord Mayor of the City of London was established. About half the population was lost in the Black Death, but the city remained. By the time of the Tudors in the late 1400s, London was the center of Protestantism in England. This helped make it easier when King Henry VIII separated from the Catholic Church and began the Church of England. Under his dissolution of the monasteries, many of the places he gave away or took over became the places that we know today. The leper hospital of St. James, as an example, became St. James Palace. London was becoming a center of commerce, and as such, the cities of Westminster and London basically merged to become the London we know today. During Tudor times, London was also a site of cultural growth, especially with the arts. William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe were active at this time, and the famous Globe Theatre was built. During the Stuarts, London and the City of London within it became two distinct yet intertwined entities. September 2nd, 1666 saw the Great Fire of London. Much of the city was destroyed, including Old St. Paul's Cathedral, 44 livery company halls, and the Royal Exchange were among 60% of London, which was burned. King Charles II called for proposals on rebuilding London, and this is where Christopher Wren enters the story. Wren's new city included many of the landmarks we know today, including St. Paul's Cathedral. Piccadilly and Burlington House sprang up at this time and separate the merchants from the upper classes. In its Rebuilding of London Act of 1666, Parliament specified, "Building with brick is not only more comely and durable, but also more safe against future perils of fire." This is why no buildings in London today are primarily made of wood, and none have thatched roofs. That is, with one exception. The Globe Theatre was rebuilt in 1997, 750 feet from where it had originally stood. It is built as it would have been in 1599, with one major exception. A modern fire and suppression system was built into the structure to prevent fire. In 1691, King William III bought Nottingham House, which he transformed to Kensington Palace. The Bank of England was founded in London in 1694, and Lloyd's of London followed shortly after. London was the main centre of commerce for England at this time, with 80% of all England's imports and 69% of all of its exports going through London. St. Paul's Cathedral was completed in 1708 on Christopher Wren's birthday. Mayfair sprang up as a district for the wealthy in 1740, and in 1762 King George III purchased Buckingham House from the Duke of Buckingham. The architect John Nash was among those entrusted with turning it into the Buckingham Palace that we know today. Fleet Street became the center for newspapers of the day during this time. 1750 saw the construction of Westminster Bridge, which made it the second bridge after London Bridge to make crossing the Thames a possibility. In 1800, London's population was 1 million, making it one of the largest cities in the world. During the 19th century, it grew to 6.7 million, mostly thanks to the expansion of the British Empire. It took a lot of people to run the British Empire. In 1836, many of the railways were laid down, and in 1863, the first London Underground line was opened. During the 19th century, many famous landmarks were built in London. These included Trafalgar Square, Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament, the Royal Albert Hall, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and Tower Bridge. Before World War II, in 1934, the Labour Party orchestrated the building of the Waterloo Bridge and the Metropolitan Greenbelt, which gave London many of her parks. During the war, the city was bombed, and the Second Great Fire of London occurred. 30,000 Londoners lost their lives in these bombings. Today, London is a modern city with many older buildings still dotting the landscape. It hosted the 2012 Summer Olympics, and its population is now at 9.1 million, making it the third most populous city in the world. So as I have mentioned before, I love London. This city always has something new to discover, and part of that is due to the history of the city. You can walk the city for days and always discover something new. Sometimes it might just be a pickup cricket game in a local park, and sometimes it's part of the old Roman wall that surrounded the city in antiquity. One of the coolest things is that no matter where you go, you can discover local neighborhoods and a myriad of pubs with local flavor and feel. There are over 3,500 pubs in London alone. Almost everywhere you can see something of historic significance. Some buildings still have damage from the bombings during the Second World War. Also, every time they dig in the city, either for a new building or an underground, they find a new piece of history. It's easy to see how the British Empire influenced the growth of the modern city of London. You can walk among the buildings of that era and just feel the pomp and circumstance from it. Of course, England is very much all about pomp and circumstance, which you can see whenever you pass one of the royal palaces. Another amazing thing is the smells of the city. It's a foodie's delight, and you can always find a place where your nose will be happy with the various spices of the myriad of different immigrant cultures in London, which make up more than half the city's population as of 2011. London is a walking city, and you can get around with your 2 feet pretty much anywhere in the city. However, the public transportation is also very good. From the buses to the underground, you can get around the city in many different ways depending on where you want to go. That's a good segue into what you can do and see in London. London is an amazing place for things to see, and in this episode, it could be hours long. So I'm just going to give you some highlights. One of the main things to see is the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. The full one takes place at 11 a.m. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. This is the full spectacle with the regimental band and all the pomp. If the king is at Buckingham, they will play traditional British marches, but if the king is not in residence, they will play more modern music. Some selections in the past have included the theme from Game of Thrones, the Avengers song, James Bond themes, various Queen songs, and even ABBA. It's recommended you show up early if you want to be close to the fence line. If you miss Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then you can see the less formal captain's inspection on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 3 p.m. Another really fun thing to see, especially if you love history, are the Churchill War Rooms. This is the underground bunker that Churchill ran England from during the Second World War. These rooms contain a cabinet room and rooms where many of the decisions during the war were made. If you've seen the movie The Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill, then you have some idea of what the war rooms look like, although the film did use a recreation. Continuing on the World War II theme, moored on the Thames at Queen's Walk is the HMS Belfast. She's a town-class cruiser and served with distinction during World War II. She's probably best known for her role in assisting in the destruction of the battlecruiser Scharnhorst. You can walk throughout the ship, and in the Combat Information Center, you can hear a reenaction of the Scharnhorst mission. A little further down the Thames is the Tower of London. This was the fortress originally built by William the Conqueror, also known as William I. It was a royal household and even served as a royal prison. Richard I, Henry III, and Edward I were all responsible for expanding it to the building that we know today. Henry VIII had 2 of his ex-wives held there during their wait for execution. There's a plaque in the courtyard that denotes where they were beheaded. It's also the home of the Crown Jewels. The yeoman warders, also known as the Beefeaters, are responsible for the security of the tower and are also tour guides. Fun little side note about the yeoman warders is that many of them moonlight as Jack the Ripper tour guides. This is another great thing that you can do in London. These tours can be found at the Tower Tube Station, and if you exit next to the old Roman wall, you can usually find someone there advertising Jack the Ripper tours. This tour takes you to the sites of the 5 canonical murders, and usually walks through the Whitechapel district where an additional 4 murders occurred. This is a night walking tour to give it the proper ambiance. But it was a fun and amazing experience, and I highly recommend it. While you're in the area, Tower Bridge is worth a visit. Aside from being photogenic, most people who don't know better mistake it for London Bridge. Fun historical fact about London Bridge: the one from the 1830s is currently spanning Lake Havasu in Arizona. The current actual London Bridge dates from 1973 and is a fairly uninteresting box girder bridge. Tower Bridge, on the other hand, was built between 1886 and 1894. It connected the 2 banks of the Thames, right next to the Tower of London, and is built in the Victorian Gothic style. It is one of the more recognizable landmarks of London. 2 things which are also worth a visit, more just for the feel of England, are the Royal Courts of Justice, and a little further down the Strand, the Twinings Tea Shop. The Royal Courts of Justice house the High Court and the Court of Appeals of England and Wales. It was officially opened by Queen Victoria in 1882, and you are able to take a tour of the building, and it is definitely worth it. As I mentioned, a little further down the street, which is the Strand, is the Twinings Tea Shop. The company has a history dating back to 1706, so the company is older than the founding of the United States. It holds a royal warrant, which means it supplies its wares to the royal court. The building the current store was started as a tea room that was founded by Thomas Twining. The Globe Theatre, as I mentioned earlier, has been rebuilt and do run productions of Shakespeare. It's a great place to visit to see Tudor architecture. And while you're there, you can visit the George Inn. This was a historic coaching pub near the Globe and serves both good food and beer, supposedly brewed the way they did it in Tudor times. Another thing to see while you're in London is the West End and the Theatre District. Here you can see some amazing shows that rival what you can see elsewhere in the world. Although they are not a sponsor of this show, I will highly recommend the app Today Tix. That's TODAYTIX, no space. It can help you find amazing shows at the last minute for really reasonable prices. Part of this is because the United Kingdom subsidizes the arts so that none of the tickets are generally more than $100, which is what I paid for Hamilton when it opened in London. Since we spoke about the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace earlier, it's only fair that I point out that you can visit the staterooms as part of the Buckingham Palace tour. During the spring and summer, you can also do afternoon tea at the palace. And can you think of anything more quintessential than afternoon tea at Buckingham Palace? For those who want to experience high-end shopping, London is also a great destination. You can browse the department stores of Harrods and Selfridges. The second name might sound familiar, as Harry Selfridge gave us the phrase that customers so often misquote. The customer is always right in matters of taste. That is the full phrase. The customer is always right in matters of taste. When asked about it, Selfridge explained that if a customer wants to buy an ugly hat, why stop them? It is their taste and they can never be wrong about that. Sadly, this phrase has been abused by so many who stop and cut it off after the first part. Regardless, the shopping in the UK is absolutely first-rate, and their customer service is amazing. The Palace at Westminster and Big Ben, which is right there as well, are another fun place to visit. This is the British Parliament, and you can take a tour of both the Commons and the Lords. There's a gallery to enable you to see them while they're in session, and if you visit when they're not, the tour includes the floor as well. Big Ben, for those who don't know, is just the name of the bell inside the clock tower. While you're in that area, a visit to Westminster Abbey should be added to your visit. It was commissioned by Edward the Confessor, so the architecture is medieval Gothic. It was made a royal peculiar, which is a church in the Church of England, answerable only to the monarch, by Queen Elizabeth I. It is where the kings of England have held their coronations since William the Conqueror in 1066. The abbey itself is gorgeous, and you can see many royal tombs here, including Edward I, Mary I, Elizabeth I, Charles II, William and Mary, and Queen Anne, among others. There's also Poets' Corner, where you can find the tombs of Geoffrey Chaucer, of the Canterbury Tales fame, Lord Tennyson, Charles Dickens, and Rudyard Kipling. The area also has a cluster of scientists, including Sir Isaac Newton, and Charles Darwin, and Stephen Hawking. Also inside is the Unknown Warrior. This was the first tomb to an unknown soldier from World War I. The funeral was held on the 11th of November, 1920, and this stone under which the soldier is buried is the only one in the abbey that it is forbidden to walk on. St. Paul's Cathedral is another place that you should visit when you have the chance. This cathedral is part of the Anglican Church and is the seat of the Bishop of London. The current church, as mentioned earlier, was designed by Sir Christopher Wren and is Baroque in style. I could do a stupid dad joke here, but since the cathedral is Baroque, it doesn't need to be fixed. The cathedral has the highest domes in the world, and in England is second only to Liverpool Cathedral. The suffragettes bombed it twice in 1913 and 1914 as part of their terror campaign to gain the vote. It was also bombed and struck twice during World War II, although St. Paul shrugged off those attacks and survived. Hyde Park is another place that is well worth a visit. As a park, it is beautiful and situated in the Westminster area of London. It's also the largest park in London. On Sundays, in the northeast corner of the park, you can visit Speaker's Corner. This is an open area where you will get all manner of people who will stand on their proverbial soapboxes and speak on any topic they wish. Although you will be told that those speaking here on Sundays are immune from law and no subject is off limits, this is not technically true, although the Metropolitan Police will only intervene if they receive a complaint or sometimes on grounds of profanity. If you happen to be a fan of James Bond films, you can get your picture taken outside the SIS building. This is the home of MI6. MI is shorthand for military intelligence, and the building is home for the Secret Intelligence Service. This building is along the banks of the Thames. If you like spy thrillers, I can recommend very selfishly A Cloud in the Desert. There will be a link to that in the description. That book takes you, among other places, to the headquarters of MI5, the UK's internal security service. Their headquarters is known as Thames House, which is one bridge further up the Thames and on the other side of the river from the SIS building. That's right, both spy headquarters are in plain sight and easy to get photos with. While we're on literary figures, if you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes and if you remember the old Granada TV series with Jeremy Brett and David Burke, you can visit 221B Baker Street, the home of the fictional detective. This building has been made up to look like the building from that show. There are plenty of other Sherlock Holmes sites that you can visit throughout London, but this one is probably the most iconic. The Tube Station, that's what the locals call the Undergrounds, near Baker Street, has a Sherlock Holmes motif on the walls. Speaking of the Underground, it is worth visiting many of the stations, including Charing Cross and Embankment, for the artwork available there. Paddington is a good one, as it is also where you can catch some westbound trains in the Heathrow Express. And, of course, see the statue of Paddington the Bear. As who doesn't want to see the statue of Paddington the Bear? The color-coded map has become iconic, as has the roundel that makes the Underground logo. Another thing you can do while you're in London is take a ride on the London Eye. This gigantic Ferris wheel is 120 meters, or 394 feet in diameter. It stands 135 meters tall, or 433 feet tall. It's cantilevered and supported on an A-frame on one side. It was open to the public in 2000, and until 2006, it was the tallest Ferris wheel in the world. For museums, there are 4 that I will recommend. This is not to say that they are the only ones in London, but these are my top museums. The first of these is the British Museum. This museum has so many amazing artifacts from all over the world, which means most of the things in it aren't British, but 2 of the most amazing ones are a copy of the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Rosetta Stone. Both of these are just fascinating, and I could do an entire episode on them alone, but this is a travel podcast, so I will just recommend that you go see them on your own. The next museum to visit is the National Portrait Gallery. It is located right next to Trafalgar Square and has many of the portraits of the kings and queens of England, as well as other famous figures through English history. I have a secret about the National Portrait Gallery, but for that one, I am going to ask that you contact me directly. For the last traditional museum, it's the Victoria and Albert. This museum is named after Queen Victoria and her husband, and the collections are worth a look, but the real star of the show here is actually the museum itself. The architecture is gorgeous, the interiors are well thought out, and some of the installations inside, like the Chihuly exhibit, are just incredible. The last one isn't a traditional museum by museum standards, but it does have exhibits. It's the British Library. The exhibits change often, so I recommend checking their website before visiting to see what their current one is. This is also where, if you have credentials, you can see some documents throughout the history of England. As an example of that, they have 2 copies of Magna Carta. Trafalgar Square is also a nice place to visit, along with Nelson's Column, and this commemorates the Battle of Trafalgar during the Napoleonic Wars and is always a good photo op. So, this then brings us to the end of this episode, and I do hope that you have enjoyed this chance to learn about London, and I really hope that I've enticed you to visit. I also hope that you enjoy these companion YouTube videos to our podcast series. You can find a link to that series in the description. And remember, if you want some help making your travel dreams come true, feel free to email me at lynx@globetrottingwithlynx.com. That's Lynx, Lynx. You can also find a link to my Fora profile in the description of this video, as well as a link to the Globetrotting with Lynx booking site where I can help you book some of your own amazing cruises and travel adventures. Until next time, please keep having amazing travel adventures and enjoy your own globetrotting. This is Lynx saying travel safe and have fun.